Yeah, I don't have
But
to.
if I do, it's an incentive.
Yeah, and that's why it's interesting, because people are still going to want to sell their homes, right? And they're still going to want that buyer's agent to come in and sell their home. So, it's going to come down to what to do: offer the commission or not. Are we rolling?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, we are, but it's not.
Okay. And I think some people think it's going to affect the price, and some don't.
Yeah, that's what
We have an extra laptop here. We can use here.
I'm thinking it might be smarter to just have Dino green screen.
Okay, that's fine.
Gene, let's just do green.
Yeah.
That'd be way easier, right?
Okay. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to change much. It might actually encourage people to sell more, because now I can sell my house and I don't have to pay 6%. But it's going to slow down buyers, because buyers will be more responsible for their agent and their fee.
I think everyone's going to try to just keep it business as usual. But then the disruptors are going to come in and they're going to try to, like the group and Remax, they're going to try to just keep doing what they've been doing. Right?
Yes.
A little bit of different nuances to it. But then you're going to get like 8Z or some of those that are going to be like.
Yeah, we already have discounted fee brokers.
Yep.
They're already kind of doing it.
Yeah. Should I ask a question? I was just wondering how technology changes has it changed?
It's going to change a lot. It's about to happen.
Okay, so that'd be a relevant question to ask?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good or bad?
It depends on your side, right? That's how technology always is. AI is going to change everything.
We're on the side that we all want to retire within the next 5 or 10 years.
Are you guys? I need 10 more years. Are you guys?
All right.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah. There's a new form coming out. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's a new appraisal form coming out.
Is it bracket things differently?
Yeah, it's going to be a big change. Okay. You know how the form is basically 2 pages? It'll now be like 7 or 8. And what they want to do is they want to take all the narrative, addendum, and the pictures, and they want to bring it from the addendum and bring it more into a report that flows. Okay. So like if you were talking about the site, and they would want to see, why not the plat map right there where the site is? Okay. And when you talk about the subject and the condition, why not the pictures right there? But you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think what we're going to see is the overall length of the appraisal won't change, but the way it flows will be way different.
But will it change the determination of value? Will you have to do something different?
No.
I know like when we started running it through the automated system, it kind of changed how much you could just use, how subjective you could be, right?
Yeah.
You had to fit within, you could have adjustments.
It's going to be more like that too. Okay. Yeah. It'll be drop-down menu selections, less subjective information. What they really want? They want someone to walk through a house, evaluate the condition, the size, give you a sketch, and then that's it. They want as much artificial intelligence as they can get.
Which, why they're going to have a lot of houses that are dogs that they're going to own.
Yeah, I think so too, right? Well, and unfortunately, valuing a home is not completely scientific.
Right.
It's...
well, I mean, part of it is like what someone will pay. So even if on paper it won't appraise to something, you could have some house that just has really great curb appeal or something and everybody wants it.
So we'll always have that to deal with.
Mm-hmm. As long as they let you deal with it. That's what scares me, is that they keep taking away the human part of it.
Yeah. And the truth is, if you go into a journey neighborhood, you don't need me.
No.
You don't even need me.
You're going to end up upside down no matter what.
Well, you know what I mean? They sold the last 10 for X amount, and they're the same. And there's one builder, is it LGI? Yeah. They don't even let you change anything. It's literally the same.
Yeah. We do you ever get LGI stuff?
Occasionally. Yeah, down in Fort Lupton or Firestone.
We have a joint venture with LGI.
Yeah. So I get your stuff down there.
Down there, okay.
And it's awesome because you just walk in and you're like, yeah, just like the last one.
Yeah. Quick question. Where did he go?
Some of the things we have to deal with them though is
he went to get something.
The lot backs up to a park or it backs up to an oil field or those things. But
power ladders.
Yeah.
What about the octagon shaped house? I do remember one of my very first ones. The guy was building one of and
oh my god, the geodesic dome.
Take it,
and an earth berm.
Is that like a dome home?
Yeah, kind of. But I also had the reason I quit Bank One Particular and Chase. I had an appraiser. All my people were in Scottsdale, and I had an appraisal of a rural property, and it came in at like 280 or whatever. And my underwriter dropped the appraised value 10,000 just arbitrarily because she said excess acreage and it wouldn't be marketable. And so she just took 10,000 off the appraised value, and I was like, what? Like, and I didn't know how weird that was to do that at the time either. But then, like 10 minutes later, I got a call from Russell, and he was like, hey, Countrywide wants to hire Paige, but she's gonna like get out of the business. Do you want the interview? I was like, yep.
That worked out pretty good.
And I wouldn't have taken the call. I mean, had I not just had that horrible thing happen, not horrible, but are you here?
You want me out here?
Oh, all right. So you said I'll be right back, and then you left. Did anybody think we were waiting for Jane?
I did.
We were waiting
I
for
did.
you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I just peaced out because my camera's going.
Okay.
It's recording.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, good. Okay.
Out here? You want me out?
Just a little more communication that we're not waiting for you.
Did you wait for me?
We're on the same page.
we must have been talking. Yeah.
So the way I think I kind of envision this is usually our coffee talks aren't very long. We have had some that are like 30 or 45 minutes, but
Okay.
we don't have a lot of engagement on those. So I really kind of see this maybe being several
Yeah.
shorter clips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a conversation with Steve Kelley.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
several
Yeah, like a
shorter
little
clips with that,
podcast. Is that kind of what we're doing?
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
All right.
So
Yeah.
we probably won't, we'll probably just do one introduction, but we'll probably just have several.
Yeah, I think we'll do
Yeah.
one introduction, and then depending upon how long we go, we'll have them cut it up and maybe even some reels and
Yeah.
put
Okay.
it on our YouTube
Yeah.
and maybe in full.
Yeah, if you each have whatever topic you want to talk about,
Okay.
and then you can cut them
So
into
what do you think
sessions.
the very first thing we should ask about?
Did you want to ask about trends?
Well, do you think value is stable, increasing? I think that's a short and sweet opener.
What do you guys seeing on your appraisals? I mean, I know how I feel.
Well, I've had two appraisals come in low, but they were both, same appraiser, they were both Sage homes with incentives. And one of them they were putting down so much we didn't fight it, the other one we bought and he increased it. So I think otherwise we've been pretty,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, we haven't had any.
That's what I'm seeing too. It's flat mostly. Well, here, let's
Okay,
just yeah.
okay, let's go.
Are you doing the intro?
I can do the intro. You want me to?
I'll ask the first question, then whatever comes next you can ask.
Okay.
So am I looking at Hannah's phone? Am I looking at Jean's phone?
I would look at Hannah's phone most of the time.
Okay.
And then every once in a while we do things.
Yeah, just give her a little wink over there. I can only wink with my right eye, so
She's gonna be
you
like,
guys won't see it over here.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
No, she's She's gonna be like, you got something
I doubt you won't be judged on your winking skills. Yeah.
Oh, let's hope not.
let's hope Lisa cannot cough.
That'd be great.
Hello and welcome back. It's your Lone People Ignite girls, and we have a special guest today in Steve Kelley. He's a local appraiser who has been in the business in Northern Colorado for the past 30 plus years. We've been having a lot of questions from you, our realtor friends, about just things that we thought Steve could help answer for us. Things about the local trends, things about what affects appraisal, looking at FHA appraisals, all sorts of different stuff. So
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for having me
joining
today.
us
Yeah,
today.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. So I think one thing she mentioned, and it's the number one rule in real estate is that it's local. So no matter what we hear is happening as a national trend, as far as values are going up, they're going down, there's not enough houses on the market, it really comes down to what's happening in your local market, and Steve would see a lot of that. So what do you see as far as values? Do you think they're up, down, stable?
Well, yeah, after our large run up and craziness, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. Rates were creeping and people kind of went to the sideline. And now I think people are starting to say, well, this is how it is. And there's a low inventory with still a lot of demand. And so values have remained relatively stable to even increasing in some areas. It definitely depends on price range,
Yeah.
neighborhood, location, but as a broad stroke, mostly stable.
So one of the questions that I get from clients is in the valuation, how does the basement play into that? And do they need to have flooring in the basement? And is it unfinished? And how does that factor in?
Sure.
Different rules for
Yeah.
the basement
Right.
and upstairs.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. The first thing I like to explain to homeowners and buyers and people is that as an appraiser, we separate the main floor square footage from the basement square footage. We call it above grade and below grade. So the basement would be below grade. And then as far as basements go, we consider basements either finished and then or unfinished. So I would treat it as an adjustment for unfinished basements. I would adjust that size, and then I would adjust separately for how much of it's finished. And so that's kind of how an appraiser would look at the basement. Now, as far as like flooring, and we typically consider basements finished as a percentage. So, you know, we do the calculations. I mean, it's as close as we can get it. But sometimes the home doesn't have flooring, and all the walls are done and everything's trimmed out, and all they need is carpeting or whatever. And so we would estimate approximately how much of a percentage it would take to get that in order to transfer it to the form, and then use a price per square foot number to adjust.
You
for
wouldn't
it.
come in and say, you must put flooring in the basement, you would just adjust for.
Yeah.
The flooring.
Most lenders aren't concerned about whether or not there's flooring in a basement. They're more concerned about above grade finishes. They would be very concerned if there was no flooring in the upstairs and not the basement.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about, I haven't had this come up in a while, but non-permitted basements? Are you still seeing that?
Yeah, it's just happened last week. Yeah, it's a really tough conversation because some homeowners will finish their basement, and unfortunately, sometimes they're really good at it.
Yeah.
And then you have to explain to them that it's technically an illegal use based on the zoning and the city ordinances, and so you can't value the finished part. Obviously, there's a basement. We can value the unfinished part, but not the finish.
Oh, wow.
But there is a solution, and most municipalities will allow you to do a retrofit permit, and it's not overly expensive.
Probably just messes up the timeline.
Timing.
Yeah, timing's a big issue. If you have the time, a lot of people retro permit, and then it doesn't affect the appraisal.
In that situation, would you say that most real estate agents are they know of that on the front end, or are you finding out when the appraiser goes?
Yeah, you know, most agents find out right away, and they handle it right up front. Sometimes you have that one that slips through the cracks, and then you have a headache.
The other big thing that's happening right now is seller concessions. We're seeing a lot of builders concessions and seller concessions in today's market.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how that impacts your job in appraising the home?
Yeah, and like if you were a listing or selling agent, what's the correct way to present these concessions and to have them in the contract so that we have the best chance of appraising at the value?
Right. So it can be a little tricky, and it can be a little gray. But for the most part, concessions are paid by the seller as part of the deal, and you want to make sure that the concession didn't affect the sale price, basically. So if someone had a home and they were selling it, and someone came in and said, yeah, we'd like to pay your asking price, but then we'd like you to pay X amount towards our closing costs. Right up front, you're asking the seller to basically come off, whatever the concessions are off the sale price. So that would be a reducible concession because it's right up front. Everybody's, and then the seller can decide, that's acceptable to me, or no, I think if you want concessions, offer me more than the asking price. And that happens a lot. And, sometimes there's room in the appraised value to get that all done.
Sure.
And sometimes there's not.
Yeah, for part of it at least.
Yeah. The other tricky part is when builders are offering incentives right up front, sometimes they can be pretty large. And so the hardest part is to find out what the incentive is. If the incentive is, hey, we'll offer you, quartz countertops versus granite countertops, and it's, use that credit towards that item, then that's not a reducible concession.
Sure.
But if at the closing they're offering you, $15,000 to reduce your closing costs and your loan buy downs, et cetera, that would be a concession that we'd have to reduce by. But if it was a specific lender that was offering an incentive that you got the incentive if you use the lender, but you don't if you don't use that lender, then that wouldn't necessarily be a deductible concession because you only get it if you use the lender, and the lender's offering the incentive And so that's where it gets a little gray. So sometimes it's hard to get that information from the builder, like how much of it was towards upgrades and how much of it was the lender giving them an incentive to use them, that kind of thing. So I would say if you're using builders, just be clear in the MLS, like, hey, they received a concession from the lender that was lender only, not seller. And then that helps the appraiser know how to handle it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of along the same lines of concessions, how do you handle, or what do you think of escalation clauses in the contract?
In the offer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, we saw them forever.
Right.
You know?
Actually, we're still seeing.
Yeah. Are you? Okay. All right. So I haven't seen one in a little while.
I had one.
But that doesn't surprise me because there's so few homes for sale right now. No one will sell their home. Everyone feels rate locked. Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if someone was doing that.
And when you see that, as long as you can support that escalated price,
Yeah,
then
sure,
it's not an issue.
right.
But I'm sure there's some of your opinion having to do with,
Or
kind of
even
that
just like
frenzy.
offering above
right?
the
If that's
I'm actually okay with it. It's not really my job to determine kind of where it should or where the asking price should be.
you just have to support.
Right. Well, what would the market support for this particular piece of property? And if people list their properties for various reasons.
Yeah.
I'm moving. I need to sell it quickly.
Yeah.
I have a year to sell. I'll wait till someone pays my price in cash. Everyone, it's so different. That's why, as an appraiser, we have to talk to everyone involved.
Yeah.
Find out what the story was.
I do really like that part, that I don't think most people realize that happens behind the scenes.
Yes.
That you are calling the listing agent, the selling agent. You might be calling the listing agent on one of the comps that you're using to find out what was unique to that sale. I don't think most people understand how much you do actually know about the
Yeah.
before you're coming up with a value. But it's good because that's what we need, right? We need to have reasonable value.
The classic question is, as I'm walking out the door, what's it worth? And the classic answer is, I have no idea.
It's kind of like when people call us and they say, "What's your rate?"
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have, well, it depends on a lot of stuff.
My
Right.
rate's 20. I don't know.
And it is a good opportunity to explain to them, oh, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm just gathering information at this point, and we'll analyze the information.
Yeah. But people
When
are
we got-
nervous for sure. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of anxiety that goes into
Right.
buying and selling. So
Yeah.
So really, though, that really is probably about your first step is visiting the home. And then there's so much work that goes in behind
Yeah.
the scenes before the report is turned in.
For sure. Like a lot of times, like the county assessor might have the wrong square footage on the house. And so if you pull information before you go out the house, sometimes you get out there and be like, wow, there's like 300 square feet more here than what I was expecting. I have to start over.
yeah.
And so
You try not to do too much before you see it the first time.
yeah, well, honestly, now that the realtors are having the homes measured before they list them, yay. That's a huge help because now we can really trust that floor plan, that square footage, and today's pictures are great.
Yeah.
They do a great job with pictures.
You have so much more.
Maybe a
information
little
than
too
you-
good with the pictures.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, doing an appraisal 30 years ago, when you didn't have MLS online where you could look up
Yes.
comps. I mean, you had to be so much more legwork to get the information.
Yeah, we had to visit each individual realtor, photocopy the sale, and put it in a 3-ring binder, and then every time we went to that office, we had to collect the sales, and yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technology has changed. That was, I guess, one of the other things that we were going to ask about. Sounds like there is continued change as far as technology and how it will play into how you do your job. So what do you think the biggest change there will be?
Well, I think the biggest change is going to be artificial intelligence, and how does that help us and how does that hurt us? Will we adapt to it and use it to our advantage, or will we resist it and be unhappy about it?
Where do you fall on that?
The older I get, the harder it is to be, to adapt. But, I guess the older I get, the more I know I have to.
Right.
So, yeah, we're getting a new appraisal form, and that's going to be out, I think, in maybe the end of this year or into the next year.
Okay.
That'll be a big change. Probably how you guys kind of look at the information too. It'll be a lot of the same information, just in a different presentation. But the other thing that's changing a lot is they're doing a lot of things for people who are good borrowers. They're not always asking for an appraisal,
All right.
or they're asking for us to do a desktop appraisal
Right.
where we don't look
Sure.
at it. And so that's hard for us old school guys
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
be comfortable with using someone else's information
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
form our opinion.
Well, and I think it's hard on our end too, because I think the desktop doesn't have as much information, but it doesn't seem to have that great of a value because the cost isn't that much different than a
Right.
full appraisal. So you look at that and you're like, yeah,
Might as well
maybe
do
my
it
client
all.
would rather just
Right.
have the full appraisal and have all the information that would have.
Yeah.
in there. So, because like a desk review wouldn't take into account any health and safety or property conditions, right?
Right. They wouldn't have their eyes on the property.
Yeah. Which seems like that's a important part.
Yeah, we'll always have to have someone evaluate the
Yeah.
physical property. I think they're just trying to cut costs, and
Mhm.
loans are expensive, as
Yeah.
we all know, and
Yeah.
it's expensive
Ours
to buy a
is-
house.
Ours are, yeah.
Um,
The cost, I mean, well, credit reports have gotten crazy expensive. right?
Yeah, well,
Have you seen
title
that
insurance.
thing?
No, I haven't. How much is a credit
A
report
credit
now?
report is now $140.
Oh my gosh, and they used to be around 70.
17,
oh,
17,
cheap.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
My
So
goodness.
like 3 months ago, industry wide. Yeah. So
Oh.
I mean, as a percentage, that's a crazy increase.
That is a crazy number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything is more.
Yeah.
So another question that I get from clients that want to put money into their home, a lot of times they are looking for a dollar for dollar.
Sure.
What's the word?
Me too. I would like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
A return on investment.
I'd say more than dollar for dollar. I
Yeah.
want to put in
Yeah.
2,000 and have the house be worth 100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what would be how would someone get the most bang for their buck as far as whether it's flooring, whether it's
Yeah.
bathroom?
This is a good, I get this question a lot too. I think you have to start with what is the condition of the item that you're going to work on. If it's very old and outdated, the kitchen's 40 years old, the cabinet doors don't work, etc. You know what I mean? It's time. So you're going to get a lot more money for that new kitchen in that home than you would if the home was, say, 5-6 years old and you just didn't care for the color. And you're removing a perfectly fine kitchen with a really nice kitchen. Clearly, you're going to get more when you move from old to new. So it really does depend on the subject property and what it is, and the current condition that you're changing. But for the most part, if you're improving the condition of the home, that's a good investment. So if the carpet's 7-8 years old and you replace the carpet before you sell it, you're probably going to get as much or more than the cost of the carpet when you sell the house. And if you paint, if it needs to be painted, and all those are the things that you carpet and paint and that kind of thing, you get your money back. The tough ones are kitchens, because people get excited about kitchens and master baths, and it's hard to say no to things that are just really awesome. And they look great, and so it's easy to kind of let those kinds of remodels get out of control, and before you know it, you're like, wow, we'll never get our money back. But I tend to tell people that if it really needs it, you're probably going to do really well on your return on investment. And just be careful that if it's strictly just a personal preference and what you have, your item is fine, then do it because you love it and you want it, not because it's going to return a value.
I think that's really key, though, talking about why you're doing it.
Yeah.
If it's just personal and you're looking at how long you're going to be in the home versus if you're only there 3 or 4 more years.
Yes. Yeah. But this is the conversation we have with someone who's putting in a swimming pool, that you're probably not going to get your money back on the swimming pool. But if you and your kids are going to enjoy the swimming pool, please put in a swimming pool and enjoy it, love it. And
not in this market, probably.
it'll return something, but probably not what it costs.
That kind of leads, I think, to the next question that you said you get asked a lot, and we get asked all the time, is appraised value versus assessed value, and who has access to the appraisal? Does the assessor receive the appraisal, and how is that different?
Yeah.
We have a lot of metro districts, so that also comes up with with that assessment versus the appraised value. So
Yeah, so homeowners are a little nervous sometimes especially when the market was going so fast. They were like, "Oh, don't tell the assessor about my home and what it's worth.
Yeah.
I don't want my taxes to
Yeah,
go up."
yeah,
And
yeah.
then we have to calm them down and say,
Yeah.
"I promise they're not
Yeah.
going to know."
it never goes there.
Yeah, the only person who ever sees the appraisal is the underwriter,
Right.
and then it goes to the loan officer, and then from there it goes to the homeowner or the borrower. And then after that, it's completely up to them who they let see the appraisal.
Right.
It can be used, it can be a good tool to fight a higher appraisal
Sure,
value.
yeah,
Assess value.
Yeah.
Assess,
yeah. And
With the county.
Right.
my suggestion would be that if you're going to use the appraisal to fight the assessment, you should call the assessor or the appraiser, and you should tell them what you're doing, and they might actually help you so that you're using the information in the best way.
Okay.
They might say, "Hey, don't forget that the date on this appraisal is this date, and the assessment date is this date." So you understand the difference between the two, and it might not help you, and it might. Yeah, there's some nuances to assessment versus appraised values, because appraised values are the day we're there, and assessments are every 2 years in this area. So it wouldn't hurt to reach out to the appraiser and have a small conversation with them and tell them what you're doing. Most would be more than willing to help you.
Yeah. Well, I think you're especially nice that way. I know people call in and you talk through things with a lot of people. So I'm like, do you have enough
Yeah.
time to do that? Like, all the people that are fighting their
Yeah.
assessment.
2 years ago I didn't, but today I do.
Yeah.
So we talked about how most houses in this area, if they're, especially like probably 500,000 or under, are still going very quickly.
Yes.
There's not a lot on the market, but we are seeing some that are sitting. And so if you just, from all your years of experience, what do you believe the biggest thing that would keep the house from going under condition? Is it overpriced or under contract? Is it overpriced or is it ugly carpet in the living room? Or
Yeah. Personalization can be an issue for sure. My first thought would be, if a home is sitting, there's probably more than one issue.
Okay.
It could be price,
Mhm.
and it could be condition. Most likely, if it's under 500,000, though, it's probably condition, or it could be location.
Yeah.
It could be an external influence on the property that is slowing it down.
Okay.
That's maybe difficult for the realtor to kind of quantify,
Mhm.
and so the market is adjusting to that influence.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because if it's priced, they probably someone would offer
Yeah.
lower, right?
Well, and it kind of brings us back to earlier where we were talking about Zillow, and some sellers are they have it in their mind already, and the realtor's like, "How do I tell this person, hey, your price is probably a little out of line, even though your online computer tells you that it's not."
AKA Zillow.
Yeah, so it's a lot of time people forget that Zillow is just really this mass analysis, and they're just taking everything. They're not taking into consideration the 2-story versus ranch, and does it back to a lake, and does it back to College Avenue? These things, and so sometimes in that broad stroke, things get mushed, and it doesn't always work.
Right, which is why we need the humans to come in and
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah.
The transaction go, right?
But yeah, a lot of times it's condition.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a lot of homes lately that haven't been selling because they're very outdated.
Yeah.
And some of the features aren't what people are looking for. And a lot of first-time home buyers who are under that 500 mark, they don't have money to remodel.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, why mess with it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you're already stretching your budget to get into a home,
Right.
the last thing you want to do is get into a home and then have a remodel
Right.
or something. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
not in the cards for
sure.
most first-time home buyers right now.
Yeah.
True, although we do have loan options for those called renovation.
Yes,
We do.
we do.
There's a little plug there, shameless plug for renovation loans.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit, we get a lot of people who, sellers tend to be afraid of FHA loans because of the appraisal or the.
They
the
think it's
issues.
going to be a
Yes.
harder appraisal.
Right, exactly. So, and
Yeah.
there certainly are,
Yeah.
things
It
that
can
you
be,
look
yes.
for when you're looking at a home for an FHA loan versus a conventional loan.
Right. So the first thing with FHA is, I think as a realtor, I would want them to know, well, as an appraiser towards a realtor, I would want you to know that not every house should go FHA. Just because it can doesn't mean it should. because sometimes the repairs and the requirements and the safety issues on the home, just no one's really going to want to deal with it. And most realtors do a good job. You know, you've got a really old home in Old Town that's got some issues.
Yeah.
FHA is going to be a challenge. But for the most part, most of the homes are in pretty good shape. FHA really just requires safety issues. You know, if it's built before 1978, then of course they care about paint. They always care about drainage and water issues, gutters and that kind of thing. We care about the roof. Will the roof last at least 2 years for this new buyer? We want the FHA buyer to come into their home and know that they've got a couple years to settle in before they have any major expense. That's the whole idea. And we also want their children and themselves to not have a safety issue when it comes to electrical, plumbing, heating, windows, paint, steps, stairways, railings, that kind of thing.
What's the biggest call out you have to make on FHA? What's the most common one?
Oh, it's definitely paint. Yeah. Lead-based paint, house built before 1978. And it's kind of a bummer, but it's just one of those things you have to have it done. And I think a lot of realtors don't understand that it's not just the house. It's the fencing. It's the storage shed. It's and it could be they painted the foundation and it's chipped and peeling paint. Oh, we have to have that done too. And so it can be kind of annoying. Yeah.
I've helped a couple people repaint some things to get
Yeah.
close.
Called a painter. And I think the other thing to know with FHA is that it's not about how good it looks. It's about getting it safe, right? So it could be, if it's a cosmetic issue, we're not too concerned about it. If the floor is there and it's functioning as a covering, it might be worn, the wood might be worn, but it still functions well. So that's not a safety issue. That would just be a cosmetic issue. So those sorts of things we don't care about.
So if you had a house that didn't have carpet, like it was subfloor, would that be able to close conventional or FHA?
So that would not, because it doesn't have a protective flooring.
So it could have really old, bad carpet, and that would be okay, just has to have something.
Yes, but the old carpet can't be torn and tattered so that there's a tripping hazard. Right, we can't have a tripping hazard.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be a safe, condition is condition, right?
Yeah.
But if it functions in its purpose, then it's probably okay.
Well, I think the one that I've come across a lot lately is appliances that don't work.
Yeah, the appliances do have to work. Yeah.
So you don't have to have a dishwasher, but if you have a dishwasher that doesn't work, you got to get rid of it.
Right.
So-
Yes. And we want to make sure that it has a range oven and refrigerator. It has to function as a kitchen for this new buyer.
So you have to be able to live in the home.
Right.
From day
Yeah.
one.
And those are the things that FHA cares about.
Yeah.
The protection for the first time home buyer or the buyer, whoever's doing it.
It's good to get reminded of that perspective, because I don't think we always think through it that way of why those rules are there. And that does make a lot of sense.
But a lot of sellers are not happy about that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We're like, I've been living here for 15 years. It was fine.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing we haven't talked about is smoke and CO detectors. They're pretty common there.
Yeah.
Even my conventional loan officers or lenders are asking for those sorts of things. So, as realtors, they should remember that.
Yeah.
I know they do, but
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to gloss over a smoke detector or a CO detector.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Well, fun question. I know. Do you guys have any other ones before we get to our fun question?
I'm ready for the fun one.
So you get to go in people's homes all day, every day for 30 years. I'm sure you've seen a lot.
Amazing.
A few things.
Amazing,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
What's the
Yeah.
most outrageous, good or bad, thing you ever saw?
The most challenging, as an appraiser, I think the most challenging thing to do is hoarding. Is probably the most challenging situation, because it does break your heart when you go in and these people are just trying to kind of figure it out. The other thing that's difficult is if they've left an animal in the house or something like that kind of fend for itself. That's a tough thing too.
Yeah.
Those are the tough situations.
Yeah.
But they don't see those very often, which is good.
Yeah.
They don't happen that often. Yeah.
What's the most unusual, like in a good way, thing that you've seen? in there.
Oh,
I don't know about
Yeah.
in a good way, but
Oh.
like just kind of the most unusual, the
Yes.
most surprising.
I do have a pretty good story. I was appraising a home one time on a couple acres outside of town, and it was an older house that was built in the 30s. And for some reason, I decided that I should look into the crawl space. And so I looked into the crawl space, and I noticed that there was some water in the crawl space. And so I took a picture of it, and I sent it in with the report. And I just said, hey, there's some water in the crawl space. Might want to have that looked at. And didn't hear anything back. And then a few years later, I got a phone call from the loan officer, and she said, hey, do you remember that house where you told us to look into that water in the crawl space? Well, we didn't. And we just got the house back, and there's an active spring under the house.
Oh, no.
And she said we had to physically lift the house and move it.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Yeah,
that's-
so maybe check the crawl space. I get in the crawl space a lot now. So yeah, you can see some weird things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is not what I was expecting
I know,
you
I
to
thought
say.
that
I
would
was
be
waiting for
very-
somebody to be living down there.
I was waiting for, like,
Yeah.
A dead body.
Right. Yeah. There have been some basements I've been scared to go into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see some things on the wall, and you're like, okay, we're out. I'm out of here. Yeah.
Have you ever gotten cold walking into a space?
No. Yes.
Paranormal.
Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing
Yeah.
this. It's super informative, and I think we forget a lot of this stuff. And I think, in 21 and 22, the transactions were just going so fast, and buyers and sellers weren't as into getting full inspections and knowing a lot about the house and the values. Of the
Right.
thing.
And
So,
wanting to waive
Yeah,
appraisals, which
yeah.
we can't, we can't
Sure.
allow that. But
Yeah.
a lot of times the contracts would come over where they would say that
Yeah.
they wanted to waive the
Yeah,
appraisals,
yeah.
Sure.
which just is not really good for protecting the consumers.
Yeah. I think we're in a better situation.
Mhm.
Now we just need more homes to sell.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
You do a little bit lower rates
Sure.
and then more homes to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we're coming. I think it's coming.
Yeah. Me too.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, you get to be an honorary Ignite girl.
Yeah.
with us.
Oh, thank you.
We always
Cheers.
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 I love that. Because everybody cheers as their coffee, right?
I don't have anything in my head.
We didn't talk about realtor commissions if you guys wanted to.
Yeah, you want to go back
NAR?
on that?
Did we do NAR?
We didn't do that.
We didn't do NAR.
We did it.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
We could
do
just
that.
film that part. And
You know what? Well, we could do whatever if you want me to be here or not.
Yeah, we're still rolling. We
Yeah.
may as well.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
because we have a guy that does all our splicing.
yeah, we don't
Oh,
know how to
good.
do any
Oh, yeah.
of this stuff, but-
Okay. Yeah. I give it to my daughter.
Yeah.
our guy is in
In the
the
Philippines.
Philippines.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Oh, he's like a gig worker that lives there.
Shout out Jonathan, because he's gonna be the one listening to this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Jonathan, like, this is what he does. His team is they just
Probably
make
amazing at
reels
it too.
and- Yeah. That's
They're great.
they're very they're focused.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They don't have to try to do loans on the side.
Oh,
Every
right.
video editing.
Yeah, that's true.
Apparently, no matter how many videos we shoot, people still want us to do loans.
Right.
Yeah.
That is
Pay
what pays the bills,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Pay the bills.
We did no loans last month, but we shot 48 videos.
And we have 3.
You're missing your calling.
Okay, so go ahead now.
Okay, so one of the big buzzwords that we're hearing right now, a lot of communication, a lot of talk in the industry about the NAR settlement.
Mhm.
And do you foresee when we talk about, the seller paying for real estate commissions? I know everything is kind of up in the air right now, but what is your take on the NAR settlement and how is that going to affect appraised values?
Well, I think the short answer is we don't know because it's so new. As far as commissions go and appraised values, I'm not sure they blend too much. It's more along the lines of an expense towards the seller, and as the seller, how much of the expense are you willing to absorb? And as the buyer, are you willing to absorb any of it? I think we're going to see a lot of negotiations going forward. The sellers are going to say, well, I don't really want to pay for the buyer's agent,
Mhm.
but I'll pay for my listing agent, and the buyer can deal with their agent on their own. But it could be good. I think what we'll find out is that agents will be a little more detailed about what services they're charging for and what they're giving their clients. And so as a seller, I might say to my agent, okay, so you're going to charge me how much, and what are the things I'm going to get for that fee? And I might say, well, that seems reasonable or unreasonable.
Mhm.
And then they can make a decision on whether or not they want to do the work for whatever the fee is. I think it's great that we'll have some negotiating, but I don't see it changing a lot. I also don't see it affecting values much. What I do see is people who were on the fence before, maybe you bought the house 2 years ago and you don't have quite that much equity in it, and the 6% was going to be a big deal. You might still put your house on the market knowing that you only have to pay 3%. And so we might see an increase in inventory, which would be great.
Yeah.
Um,
I suppose it will kind of ebb and flow too as we go in and out of buyer and seller markets, right?
Sure.
For sure.
It's a lot easier.
Who's got more of the control?
Yeah.
And right now we're in a seller situation where the sellers have a little bit more
Yeah.
control over that, so they would push a little more onto that buyer.
Yeah.
Um,
I
where's
think
the
what scares us, I think, is for the first-time home buyers and the people who don't have
For sure.
We're just trying to get the down payment money.
Veterans who can't pay
yeah.
commission.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's-
I think we're going to see the most change in lower incomes because of that,
Mhm.
and higher incomes, like over $1 million, over $2 million. Those tend to be a little more knowledgeable sellers and buyers, and so they're going to negotiate a lot harder.
Yeah.
And they kind of probably already do.
Yeah, they do.
Um,
Probably
yeah.
all comes out
So
somewhere.
Right, and we already have some of these brokers who are already trying to do discounted stuff right now,
Mhm.
so we just might see more of it.
It'll be
so-
interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as far as an overall effect on the market, I think it'll be a positive. I think we'll see fewer new agents come in who aren't as versed into handling transactions. It might be harder for them to break in because there won't be so many of those, commissions that will be paid to them
Yeah.
at that rate. They'll have to learn and struggle a little more probably.
I feel like too for agents, it's gonna because I think sometimes agents that are getting leads off Zillow and stuff, and they're taking people out, and then the people have no loyalty to them, so they'll work with them for 6 or 8 months, and then walk in and buy a house with someone else.
Right.
So having to have that buyer's agency signed,
Yeah.
maybe that will protect some of those agents and
Yeah.
make sure the buyer and the agent really want to work together before they start just running around looking at houses. So maybe
Yeah.
the work will be more productive for them because they won't be wasting their time with ones that aren't gonna.
For sure. Buyers will get more knowledgeable when they have to pay for the fee and what they're paying for.
Yep.
And so that, in a way, that'll be good.
Mhm.
They'll get better advice.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually hadn't thought about that, but I was actually pretty excited when that came down.
Yeah.
Not because I don't want realtors to make money, but I've always just kind of felt like, some of the really new agents were getting paid a lot of money
Yeah.
for what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of a luck thing. It's like,
Yeah.
Right.
You get the call in from the lead, and they take them out.